Ruby, it is so lovely to have you on the podcast today. Thank you
Thank
for
you. It's
coming.
so good to be here.
Yeah, we're here in New Mexico, which is exciting, and it's an unusually rainy day for us. So I imagine a lot of New Mexicans are outside enjoying the beautiful sights and smells of water in the desert.
I imagine so, and I really hope so, because I know that a lot of New Mexicans have told me I'm relatively still new here, that we definitely desperately need the rain. And so I know that whenever we do get a chance to receive rain, it is a celebratory event.
I can feel the celebrations,
Mhm.
and we have more coming. So it's brilliant. I would love to start off before we dive into things to hear what it is that you enjoy taking in through reading or listening or watching. What gets your attention?
Yeah. So I'm a little overloaded with doing a lot of reading and writing at work. I'm a mental health therapist at a community clinic here in Santa Fe, but I do find myself revisiting some books that I really enjoyed in grad
Mhm.
school, and because they were very applicable to of the experiences and the situations that I'm navigating with my clients as a therapist. And so one of those books that I'm revisiting is What My Bones Know.
Mm.
And it's a memoir of healing from complex trauma. And it's by Stephanie Fu. And so Stephanie is a Malaysian American individual who experienced complex trauma as she was growing and developing. And in adulthood, she started having panic attacks, and she started just really feeling a disconnect between her emotional, physical, spiritual states. And she started doing some investigating, and she was actively going to therapy, and she did some different therapeutic techniques with different therapists. But she really started investigating what was going on. Like, why am I having these panic attacks at this time in my life when things seem to be going fairly well? And, she was working at her dream job, and she had relocated to a part of a country where she really wanted to be. And right. So these things where you're sort of like, I'm checking things off my checklist, and I'm being productive. I'm climbing the career ladder, but yet things aren't really clicking internally. As a matter of fact, they're slowly falling apart. And so I was really fascinated by that book when I read it a couple of years ago, and I'm revisiting that right now.
That sounds so powerful. And it struck me when you mentioned like the timing of it, because I do think when you're in a relatively safer spot, having not been safe and experiencing trauma, that is when your brain will start to say, okay, we're safe enough now. We got to deal with this. And
Right.
it throws that up more into the conscious mind to deal with.
That's exactly right.
So it's good to be in a better place, but it means you might also get visited by unresolved things. Yeah.
It's true. It's
Mhm.
so very true. And that's actually something that I tell my clients almost daily, is that in our work together, in our journey together with therapist client, that we can work through a lot of things, and we can acknowledge what surfaces, and we can process what surfaces, and we can go even deeper than the client did previously with another therapist or in another line of work. But it's always going to be a part of us, because that's just the reality of it. It's
Mhm.
always going to be whatever we went through is always going to be a part of us. And we can do a lot of work, but it may surface later down the road in a way that we never even thought or expected.
I learned a new word this week speaking to our mutual friend Leah, and I thought I invented the concept, but I did not. I just experienced a known phenomenon, but it's called spiralizing. You've
Oh,
probably heard this.
I actually don't know much about it.
But I noticed the phenomena of like the idea that something difficult will sort of come back around almost in this spiral effect, never
Mhm.
exactly the same way, but
Okay.
in different ways. And so you might have processed some parts of it, but you're revisiting it from a different perspective or from a sort of different tone. And so spiralizing is these repeating patterns, but not exactly the same. It's not a circle.
Yes. Okay. I love that. And
I
so,
did.
yeah, it's essentially what we're discussing right now. I'm not familiar with that term.
I hadn't heard it either. And as soon as I heard her say spiralizing, I was like, I knew exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about. It's interesting how shapes and movement can really help to articulate complex emotional experiences, psychological experiences. But yeah, it does sound like that. So, What My Bones Know, fantastic. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Definitely
Yeah.
check it out.
Great. I'm curious when, especially in your line of work, what you do to help yourself regulate and get grounded, whether that's more in the sort of peaceful direction or the joyful direction.
Mhm.
Are there things that you do for yourself like that?
Yeah. So I am a mommy to two beautiful, amazing rescue kitties.
Mm.
And I've had them since 2022. And they are just the lights of my life and the loves of my life. And I really do believe that animals come to us when we need them at that perfect time in our life, and that they are soul companions for us. And so my sweet Ellie and my sweet Gary are definitely my soul companions. And I honestly, for recharging and recalibrating, nothing beats being with them.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So they are my peace and my joy. But also, what I've started doing recently is I started putting on Modern Family, which is an old show, an old sitcom
Mhm.
that premiered, I think, in like 2009, I believe. And I had not revisited that show in a long time, but I remembered that it made me laugh a lot.
Mm.
And so I do put that show on when I'm winding down. I started that within the past few weeks, and it's been really good because it's very funny. And I love the family interactions on that show. And it's just a really good way to wind down for the evening, to just laugh a
Mhm.
little bit
Yeah.
and get ready for the next day.
That's beautiful. Well, I'm so excited to hear about your journey to becoming a therapist, but also a curandera, which you
Mhm.
shared with me as an indigenous healer. And so I'll leave it to you, which if you want to include sort of both of those parts of yourself or lean more into one or another as we explore where your interest, I mean, therapy is a form of healing as well. So maybe I will just ask you, where did this journey of becoming a healer start, do you think?
So, as a Chicana, as a Mexican American, someone who was born and raised in Houston, Texas, in the barrio, but whose parents were born in northern Mexico and immigrated to the States in the 60s.
Mm.
My parents, there's another layer there too. My dad just turned 90, and my mom she'll turn 89 this year. So they're very old school. They're from a different
Mhm.
generation. And that was very beneficial for me in terms of being raised with practices and rituals, ancestral rituals that my mom and my dad didn't question because they were just a part of my mom and dad's lives, especially my dad, who was raised on a hilltop in northern Mexico with no running water and no electricity, and where midwives were a way of life. And so my mom and my dad used a lot of herbal remedies to assist when I had a stomach ache or an earache. And curanderas, healers, were very common in my barrio, in my neighborhood in Houston. And so this notion of having a healer who was a friend, a family member, a community member who understood that our as humans, that when we go through an illness or when we go through a trauma, that a part of our soul fragments, and that our spirituality and our emotional states really take a very big hit when we go through something like that. Having someone who understood that concept, and like that was just commonplace for me, and where I grew up, was key in me circling back to it later in life. So, of course, I think that there are so many so many layers and so many iterations that we go through as humans in our human development, in our development of identity and our development of self. And so, but then, when there's that added piece of, am I Mexican? Am I American? Do I speak English? Do I speak Spanish? Do I not speak Spanish? There's so many things, right? And this is just my experience. I know that a lot of different people go through their own versions of what I'm sharing. It got lost. The healer, the curandera, the curanderismo practices that I grew up with did get lost along the way. And so in 2022, when I decided to apply to grad schools to make a huge career change, and I really just started doing a lot of inventory on where I was in life and who I was in this life and who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, all these questions. That's how I found my way back to curanderismo.
And do you feel like in your pursuit during grad school, becoming a licensed therapist, was that bringing those pieces of you into that work as well? Or do they remain more distinctly different parts of yourself?
There are definitely parts of my curanderismo that I carry with me in my therapeutic work with my clients. But of course, I do keep them separate. There are pieces that I do carry with me, but for the most part, they are separate. Do practice as a curandera. I'm still an apprentice, but part of my apprenticeship is practicing within the community by offering limpias, which are spiritual energetic cleansings.
Mhm.
And I do that on the weekends whenever I have someone who wants to book a limpia with me. And that's been happening more often, which I'm so happy about. I'm so grateful for, because the word of mouth is getting out there that I am someone who individuals can go to for a platica and or a limpia. And so when I get to do that on the weekends and really truly incorporate the ways of my ancestors and the ways in which I was raised by my community, by my mom, by my dad, that is super special to me.
Yeah. Does it feel, and we don't have to get into like, you know, the other directions your career took earlier in life, but does this space that you're in now feel healing to you too?
The space as a therapist,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really does. And I really appreciate that question because I am a lifelong learner. I love to learn. I think that becoming a therapist really makes so much sense for me in terms of when I look back at some of the questions that I posed to my friends and to my family members when I was really young, like in my early 20s. I remember speaking with close friends who were having children. And I didn't become a mom to humans. I always wanted to. That was one of my dreams, and it didn't come to fruition, and that's okay. I'm completely okay with that. But I remember in my early 20s posing the question to someone who was starting their family.
Mm.
And I remember asking her, like, why? Like, did you always want to be a mom? That's where I started. Did you always want to be a mom? And she was like, yeah, I did. Percent. And then I remember following up that question with, okay, why? And not like in an accusatory
Yeah.
fashion, but really, really very, I wanted to know what this person's desire to become a mom, like where was it coming from? And I think that part of the reason that I was so fascinated with this topic and with these questions was because I come from a really large family. I'm the youngest of 10. And all of my sisters, I have 6 sisters, they all had children. And it was sort of just one of those things where I felt like internally, I thought to myself, I feel like it's just something that you do. It's not really discussed. It's not really like, this is where I would like to live or raise my family. This is the kind of education or academic pursuits that I would want to provide for my children, or I would like for our weekends to look like we're out in nature and exploring the different plants and the wildlife and the animals and, and talking about like, this is a ladybug and this is a grasshopper. And so that's where I was really fascinated with individuals and choices
Mhm.
and how life unfolds for people and why it unfolds the way it does. And so when I look back at that version of me, who was in her really early 20s, and how I had this really deep curiosity,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense for what I do with my clients.
Yeah. 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 And you're so right. We don't really stop to ask those questions. And yeah.
And you know what, Annabelle, something came to mind that I feel is super duper important for me to share regarding all of this, regarding the healer and the therapist and the connection between the two, is that when I started really asking those questions in 2022,
Mhm.
where I am, where am I in this point in my life? Who am I right now? Where do I want to go? So all these really big questions. I I was in Denver and I had just probably about a year prior to that, I had sold a small business that I had with my partner, with my former partner, who's my partner at the time. And so I had taken some time off from work after we sold the business. And then I did a few things in between before I went back to school, right? Just really trying to find my way, trying to figure out where I was going to go and what I was going to do now that I no longer had this small business to worry about.
Mhm.
And I also was no longer in a partnership. And that was the first time in decades where I hadn't been in a partnership. And so I ended up in Denver and I was caregiving for an older adult woman. She had just turned 80 and she was experiencing cognitive decline, and it was just a really good place for me to land. I'm really good at caregiving. My parents are older. They had me later in life and had a lot of experience with that. It also, because I'm a firm believer in we always end up where we're supposed to. And that's how I ended up with Ellie and Gary. I found them in Denver, is that I didn't have a lot of time. Caregiving took up almost all of my time and all of my energy. I was doing it full
Yeah.
time and I lived there. I met these amazing group of women, amazing group of curanderas at a shop very close to my house at that time where I was living with the woman who I was caregiving for. These healers, these women became my family.
Yeah.
I saw them quite frequently. And I had been in and out of therapy for a long time before I made it to these healers in 2022.
Mm.
And when I tell you that these women led me to really look at wounds that I had not really peeled back with therapists, and who were compassionate and kind, but also tough,
Mhm.
and who really helped me understand why I was where I was and how I was where I was in terms of my emotional state, my spiritual state, the life choices that I had made,
Mhm.
that it all stemmed from really far back, not only my own personal history, but intergenerational trauma,
Mhm.
which Stephanie Fu speaks about in her memoir.
Mhm.
It all started to make so much sense. Where therapists, these different therapists that I had had since I was in my late 20s, and I had been faithful to therapeutic practices,
Mhm.
um, had not really gotten me to where these healers got me in a matter of months. Is really sort of just, was very much an epiphany kind of experience for me. And that's when I decided I wanted to blend the two.
And integrate. Yeah. Yeah. I think psychology it's talked about like a new field, but that's if we fail to recognize this healing modality throughout history, often curated by women. The medical industry, we talked a little earlier, really just barred women from those healing spaces. And when I was studying psychology, I kept being struck by the efforts to which that field was adamant that it was a science. And I remember thinking a little bit like that you might have all limited this field might have limited itself in an attempt to be something it isn't, which is a pure science. It isn't, because there are these spiritual, energetic pieces to mental healing and how they're connected to the body. And when we treat it as like you go to the doctor for your body and a therapist for your mind. And so it's so powerful to hear you speak about the integration of those spaces. And that feels groundbreaking and ancient at the
Yes.
same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Both at the same time. Yes, and.
Oh my goodness, amazing. Were there some unexpected detours? I mean, you described the experience in Denver in 2022 and thinking about going back to grad school. Do you think that there were, as you sort of made that decision, some unexpected pivotal moments between then and where you are today that you hadn't expected at the time?
So many.
So many.
So many. And I feel like that was very much the case for a lot of us after 2020, after COVID.
COVID, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the more clients I interact with, I really do see and hear a theme in so many people about how their life today looks nothing really like what it did
Mm,
in 2020 or prior to
hmm.
COVID hitting. And I want to share with you that I saw my maestro, who's my teacher, who leads the apprenticeship cohort that I'm part of. I saw him last weekend and I had a one-on-one session with him. And he asked me, because of these deviations, these twists and turns, I had to take a break from the apprenticeship when I started in 2023. And then I joined a sister group of the apprenticeship out in California when I was out there for grad school. And then I took a break from that because I couldn't do the apprenticeship and grad school at the same time.
Two schools, yeah.
Schools. Exactly. And so, I mean, my maestro knows about these pieces,
Mm.
but there's a lot of information, right? There's a lot of information to keep track of for everybody. So he was like, remind me, how much work did you do with the maestras out in California? And I said, Maestro, I just was able to do really like a few months, and I went to one retreat, and then that was at the very beginning of my MSW program, and I just couldn't continue.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you really could have fooled me, because I I feel like you have gathered so much wisdom, and like you are so in tune with your spirit team. I can feel them here with you. And I said, yes, they are always with me. They are always with me. And they are with me in everything that I do with my clients, who come and see me for limpias, but also in my daily life. And the spirit team that I speak about is, I believe in God. I believe in the universe. I believe in La Virgencita, which is La Virgen de Guadalupe, which is the patron saint of Mexico. I believe in the fact that those loved ones who both I met and I didn't get to meet, who have passed away, I believe that they're with me always. And so my strong connection with my spirit team was cultivated through all of those valleys that I went through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
With you. You've formerly been doing this, not your whole life, but in a way,
Mhm.
I would think you have been gathering this wisdom your whole life too. Yeah.
I definitely do feel that way. I
Yeah.
definitely do, that everything that I have done thus far in my life really truly led me to be doing this today.
I feel that way too. And it leads to my constant enthusiasm for being older, because it does come with a stability and connectedness that can be very hard to have in early life or going through trauma or whatever life throws your way. Would you want to speak more on relationships or communities that have really been formative to shaping your perspective on therapy, your perspective on the healing arts?
So, going back to when I mentioned that when I met this amazing group of women, these female healers in Denver who just really embodied healing, and they embodied embracing the divine masculine and feminine, but they embodied that divine feminine energy that I specifically really needed at that moment in time. I was I was asking really heavy, very deep questions about where I was and who I was and where I wanted to go. And I felt really rudderless. I did not have the connection that I have today with my spirit team. I did not have. That's where it started budding from the relationships I cultivated with these women. And they provided this tender, loving, nurturing space, but also that tough love that I needed, that I really needed to hear certain things.
Yeah.
Like when they delivered those tough messages, I was okay receiving them because there was that tenderness. There was that divine feminine energy that I really needed in order to be able to receive those tough messages. And I had been through so many therapy sessions prior, right? Prior to meeting them. And I still have very vivid memories of therapists at the very beginning of my therapeutic journey who just left me feeling more lost and more alone and more bereft than when I entered their space, and how I really longed for a therapist. This time frame that I'm speaking about is like late 2007, 8, 9 is when I started my therapeutic journey. I really longed to have a therapist who could meet me where I was at. But that was extremely difficult at that time in Austin, Texas. It's where I was. I wanted someone who could understand my different cultures, who could understand my language brokering, my cultural brokering, who could understand the complexities of what I was carrying as a Chicana who was trying to figure out why she was going through, like Stephanie Fu, which is why that book really resonates with me and I'm revisiting it. Someone who could understand, like on paper, everything looks pretty good, but I'm having these panic attacks and I'm deeply depressed and I have high anxiety levels. And I longed for someone who could peel back those layers with me in a safe space. And I did not find that until I met that group of healers in Denver. And then I was like, I'm going to be that safe space for people. And I'm currently in a community clinic setting. I'm going to be that person in a community clinic setting. I'm going to be that person when I have my own private practice one day. I'm going to be that person that I never had.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
Thank you.
I wish that was there for you, but maybe that going through that also is part of what has shaped you to have the insight and the wisdom to build that for others. And I do think that there's something healing about for ourselves, about providing something that we ourselves needed and to do that for others heals a part of ourselves too that maybe didn't get that when we wanted it. At least that's I hope for that. I say that because I think I've experienced it. And as someone who felt like their brain worked very differently, and then spent my life figuring out what makes brains work differently.
Yeah, that's right.
Other people embrace that about themselves and accept that about themselves and figure out how to work with it. It's healing for me too, actually. Even if I've gotten to that place where I've accepted it figured it out for myself, to our earlier word of spiralizing, that continues to sort of come up in these different ways. And I don't think we always have to like do everything in order to be able to speak on a topic but I do think there's something uniquely powerful about having gone through and walked the walk that we're talking about, especially in a therapeutic environment.
Yeah.
And patients or people, like I'm sure you experience too, with the therapists you work with, you can tell when somebody gets it, or is just sort of like more broadly empathizing.
Exactly.
Which is also really powerful and good, but it's not the same as someone who has been there too.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever found a therapist outside of sort of the more healing spaces, but in the therapeutic world? Have you found people like yourself?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were both when I was in grad school in California and Los Angeles, and they were both virtual, but they were in the greater Los Angeles area. And I had one for my first year of grad school, and then I had another one for my second year of grad school. That's just the way it ended up working out. But they were both women of color. That's really those two items are at the top of my checklist for a therapist.
Yeah.
Female and of color.
Mhm.
And so I I remember when I spent that the summer in between those 2 years, I spent it in Texas. I went back to visit my family over that summer and stay with them. And so I couldn't see my first year therapist, because the licensing requirements, right? I was outside of
Yeah.
California. And so when I was prepping to go back to LA to start my second year, I remember I called the agency and I was like, I would like to set back up with my therapist. And they were like, oh, unfortunately, she's gone to another agency. And I remember feeling so upset because she had really done so much to help me get through that first year. She was
Mhm.
just so invaluable to me. But, with all of these valleys that I've spoken about and all these twists and turns that my life has taken, and is that it's really helped me navigate challenging times. Like that's a challenging time, like hearing that your therapist is no longer with the agency. And, I could have tried to figure out, how to see her again with her different agency. But I just was like, you know what? She was meant to be here for my first year.
Mhm.
And she got me through my first year. Like, I can't even imagine what it would have looked like without her. So, okay, spirit team is ready for me to meet someone else.
Mhm. Mhm.
That reframing has been a product of my connection with Spirit Team, which again only came about through these wild twists and turns
Mhm.
and these massive valleys that I navigated. And so then I met my second year therapist, who my first year therapist was Latina and my second year therapist is Asian American. And I remember when I interviewed her, if you will, like the first like 15-minute phone call, like, to see if we're a good fit. And I said, my really top two requirements are female and woman of color. And she was like, I'm Asian American. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And and we understood each other, different cultures, different languages, but we really understood the hyphen American experience. And we understood language brokering, cultural brokering. Didn't matter that she did it in a completely different
Right.
environment than I did, but we got each other. And that therapist, she got me through my second year. Like, I don't know what it would have looked like without her. And when I think back to those two people, I get chills speaking about the two of them to you. These amazing, wonderful, incredible women. And I'm like, yep, Spirit Team has a plan. And Spirit Team, it might be hard, but Spirit Team never gets it wrong.
Well, and you were open to it. Like you said, you could have shut down. You
Mhm.
could have tried to find your first year therapist again and never would have met the second one. Having that bravery to listen and tune in is a testament to your strength as well. Because yeah, you could have tuned out all of that. And I think the reframing example you gave is so powerful because gosh, that's everything, isn't it? I
Mhm.
mean, you can go through an experience and depending how you look at it, have completely different impact on you. And even if it happened decades ago, reframing is so powerful because memories are like water and they are very changeable, alarmingly so, actually. What can happen with memories? They're not very stable, but that's sort of like the advantage is also that the reframing can change the perspective on the memories and and then how we internalize them. And that gave me shivers thinking about
Yeah,
like that reframing. And that feels like medicine.
it does. And it is medicine.
Yeah. Is there a belief or assumption that you had about therapy, about healing, and as you became one yourself, really shifted your perspective on that?
I think what comes to mind, especially just recently going through my MSW program, my master's in social work, I completed that almost a year ago, which is really quite something. Time is just a very interesting concept.
Particularly post COVID. Have
Yeah.
you noticed that? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We all knew time got weird, but I
Mhm.
think we expected things to go back to normal and it's not happening with
Ex-
the time warp.
with the time warp.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I completed that in May of 25. Going through a grad program, I think any grad program, you learn theories, you learn techniques, and you have professors and staff who remind you of the social work code of ethics and all these principles and our the conduct that we're supposed to adhere to, and all of that obviously completely valid. It's there for a reason. But I think that what I discovered that I was really quite surprised about is that I was rigid when I was going through the program in terms of like code of ethics and um not
Mhm.
not really allowing for a lot of my authentic self to come through in my
Mhm.
sessions, right? Because again, I'm a grad student, I'm an intern. It's very regimented, I guess, if you will, right? Like all your
Mhm.
semesters and your classes, and you need to do it this way and not this way. And so my second year internship, I didn't really appreciate this piece in the beginning that my supervisor wanted me to record one of my sessions with my client's
Mhm.
approval so that she could review the
Mhm.
session and then we could review it together after she reviewed it independently. And I was like, oh no, I don't really want to do that. But again, spirit team. I was like, all right, spirit team. No other supervisor is having her interns do this. This is just what you want me to do, spirit team.
Mhm.
And so, all right, let's do this. And honestly, Annabelle, I know you'll probably hear me say this quite often, like, all right, spirit team,
I love that though.
because, there are things that come my way, like my first year therapist leaving,
Yeah.
my second year internship supervisor requesting that I video myself. And I don't really want to do this, but I'm like, okay, this was
Mhm.
presented for a reason. So let's do this. So I did it. And she said, Ruby, I could see that there were opportunities for you to share little nuggets of how you understood what your client was saying. And she said, I understand exactly where your frame of thinking is coming from.
Oh.
This is not about you. This is about the client, and that we're supposed to keep those two things separate. However,
Mhm.
you do have a lot of lived experience that led you to come back to school to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that there is so much worth in you sharing little nuggets when you feel it is appropriate and when you feel that you are comfortable with that. I want to let you know that that is part of the therapeutic process and space. And so that was something that caught me by surprise. And honestly,
Yeah.
it's just the product of me having a really good practicum supervisor.
Yeah. Yeah. That, what you described, I've had to do a lot, whether I was in the classroom teaching or as coaching, a lot of, and I remember at the start, I was just nerves, like I wanted to throw up. I was so scared. Um, And then getting to the point where I really welcome that so much because it's so impactful to be able to, it's also a practice to be able to observe yourself in the moment and you start to develop that of, because it is that balance, when you share something, you're validating their experience, you're normalizing it. You're reaching out like you're not alone. And that's like creating a healing environment for them to then do that even harder work for themselves.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's not a clear boundary line of have I shared too little, too much? And like, I think as we practice, we get more confident in ourselves and more aware of, okay, with this person, a little touch is enough. With this person, you know what? I'm going to take 5 minutes and share a story because that
Mhm.
feel like, and tuning into that person, tuning into the environment in the moment is, I think, only learned through doing it. I don't know. You don't think you could theoretically learn that. So one of the questions I often ask people is like, where, like your academic training versus your practical experience, like where are those things? Where do they cross over and where are they really different? I think sort of started to really answer that question of you learn the rules and then you learned where to bend, not rules necessarily, but this idea of best practices or in general you don't
Mhm.
want to walk into a therapy session, have your therapist tell you everything about their life all the time. That's right. So we know why the guardrails are there, but they're not quite as firm as I think we're led to believe or are taught. And that makes sense, right? Nuances through wisdom and experience, not
Mhm.
first level learning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other pieces um, that you feel like you'll learn the academic pieces, but you're sort of haven't been able to see other or add maybe more of sort of the healing work that you've done as well to that integration between, yeah,
Yeah.
psychology and healing.
Yes. So this is a different form of my healing that I'm going to share right now that I integrate in my therapeutic space with my clients is, and something that I realized I had not mentioned yet previously, is that I am less than 1 month away from turning 7 in my recovery.
Mm.
So I
Congratulations.
thank you so much.
Long time. Yeah.
And it's a golden birthday, I guess, as they say. I turned 7 on May 7th, so that's even more special for me. But, honestly, that's really where I would say that's really where my circle back to the healing ways of my mother and my community. That's where I circled back to it. And the reason I say that is because I had really disconnected and shunned anything that had to do with religion, with spirituality, with the universe. I just I didn't want anything to do with any of that. I was just in a really dark and angry space when it came to religion and spirituality. And then my mom had a traumatic brain injury in 2018, and I had a really hard time navigating that. By the grace of God, she is still with us, which is a true miracle. It really is. Even when she woke from her 5-week coma, that was a true miracle that the doctors had no kind of explanation for what was happening. But for me, there was an explanation, and that was because so many people were praying for my mom. My mom, even with her traumatic brain injury and her Alzheimer's, is a devoutly religious Catholic woman, Latina woman. And even, I mean, I can't even really tell you how that works, but it does. She's still very like, light my candle and pray to God and go to church. And so, but everybody came out in droves to pray for my mom, her community, my friends who were religious and deeply spiritual, friends, friends of family. It's just, she had this group who just came together from all different parts of the country and the world to do this for my mom. And so her coming out of that coma was like, okay, okay, there's something bigger here. There's something bigger. But I still was devastated, right? I really essentially lost my mom overnight. The mom that I knew, the mom that I had, I lost her overnight. And that devastation led to me binge drinking. I binge drank vodka and mezcal. And I just built this really, really high tolerance, and leading up to pretty much a year later, almost dying from my binge drinking. And I did not. I spent 4 days in the ICU, and the day after I got out from the ICU, I made it to 6 a.m. meeting of AA, my home group that's called Keep First Things First. And I actually spoke about my home group yesterday, coming full circle with one of my clients, coming
Mm.
full circle with, the topics, the themes that you and I have been discussing.
Yeah.
And she spoke about how she's in recovery, and I said I am too. Um, so when that happens, when I find that commonality with whichever one of my clients discloses that with me, have, we have language, we have verbiage as AA members that we're very familiar with, that really resonate with us, especially since that language and that verbiage a lot of times is really like goes back to our very early days in sobriety and recovery.
Mm.
And so they are very impactful because those passages from the big book, these phrases that we have that we all understand, take us back to when we really felt the lowest and the most lost, the most vulnerable. And
Mhm.
this language, this literature, or these human connections that we establish, or these words that we shared in a meeting that resonate and stick with us to this day. Those were our lifelines in terms of staying sober. And for some of us, for a lot of us, they were our lifelines, period. Because if for a lot of us, if we take another drink, we cannot not wake up, not stay alive. And so those were literal lifelines.
What was the phrase you used? First things first? No, what was
Keep first things first. That's
keep first things first. I
Mhm.
immediately I was like that's really good advice. And the some of I think the keeping it simple, but it's such direct language, such understandable direct language, and why implied almost is why you keep first things first.
Mhm.
And prevent, I think, too, the overwhelm and the perfectionism that drives so many folks into doing not perfect things, but that perfectionism is driving a lot. So yeah, first things first.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I would imagine when those moments come up naturally, it would be really healing to see somebody like you who has navigated that space. And I think that would be of great comfort and trust building and with your patients as well.
It is
So,
definitely all those things. It really
mhm.
is. And I've heard it. I've heard it from every client who's disclosed, and then me disclosing that I am in recovery. They're like, "You get it then. You get it." And
Mhm.
just like hearing that intonation and seeing the expression on their face, I'm like, "Yeah, it was a tough road to get here, but I'm so grateful that I'm here."
Who's that?
This is Gary.
Hi, Gary. You're very beautiful. I can't see your little eyes, but I see the color of your fur, and it's very pretty.
He's a handsome, sweet boy.
He's real handsome. Aw, he's a big kitty. Is he a big kitty? Maybe it's just because he's in front of the camera.
Just because he's in front of the camera.
Yeah,
He's like,
not that
I'm
big.
regular size. Thank you.
So sorry. Um,
No, not at all.
I want to ask you, sort of two sides of the coin of what do you really love and get energized about the work that you do, and what is particularly difficult or even draining at times?
I love the relationship, the connection that I have with my clients. Um, I'm really, I'm really good at establishing rapport really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's helping my clients feel pretty at ease really quickly. It's just a gift of mine. It really is. It's just a gift. And seeing because I can see it. I can read their body language, and I can hear it too with what they're sharing with me. Seeing it and hearing it in session it's just so affirming, and it's so life-giving for me that, again, going back to something I mentioned earlier, that everything that I've gone through has really been worth it. And I think that if I remember correctly, when you and I met the first time to sort of introduce ourselves to each other, I think I said something like, I have pinch me moments, work that I actually get to do this for a living.
Yeah.
because it's really what I love to do. And it doesn't feel like, I mean, there's energy expenditure 100%, but it doesn't feel like a job. I love every single moment that I'm with my clients. And I don't need to have, we don't need to have epiphany moments or, in order for me to have those pinch me moments to be like, my goodness, this makes it all worth it. No, just being able to hold space for anybody, but especially for people who have probably never been with another human who has been able to hold space for them in the way that I can.
Mhm.
That is incredible for me. The flip side of the coin is that working in a setting like mine, a community clinic, there are a lot of clients who
Yeah.
who need therapists. And there are a lot of requirements that go along with meeting every client on a weekly basis or whenever we come in contact with them in terms of documentation and these sets of questionnaires every 3 months. And maybe this questionnaire for a specific group of clients like once a week or once a month, or there's a lot of behind the scenes things that go into providing care for a client, a lot of behind the scenes things, a lot of behind the scenes time
Yeah.
that goes into the before and the after
Mhm.
care for each client. And so that would be the flip side. I mean, it's not horrible, it's not unmanageable, but it can feel like a lot sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and similarly working for me in the school system, the burnout that I started to feel very quickly was not from the kids or other teachers or even administrators. It was like it was the paperwork and the compliance.
Mhm.
The compliance that sometimes was in opposition to good teaching. And so whenever you're feeling like you're being like pushed in. Unethical might be too strong of a word. Sometimes it did feel unethical, but sometimes it was just, but this isn't best for the kid. This is so your lawyers are happier because of like these very tedious compliance-based rules. Yeah, I do. I know that it does not fill your cup at all. And at best it's just neutral, but sometimes it can feel like it's just taking the available energy that you would much rather give to people
Mhm.
who need
Exactly.
it and not a system that is imperfect.
That's exactly right. That's very well stated. Thank you.
Well, I understand that piece and ultimately why I did try to find my way out of it. And it sounds like your pursuit to a private practice might also there's always going to be paperwork and prep work and
Mhm.
all of that, but you would have a lot more. I think it might feel, or at least it has felt for me being independent now, that kind of work, whether it's like notes or billing or whatever it may be, does not feel nearly as draining when I have a lot more say over it and
Right.
can
Yeah.
drop all the stuff I thought was really dumb and unnecessary or not serving the individual.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
I've never met a human being who really enjoys jumping through a hoop.
Exactly.
We're wired for purpose,
Mhm.
so hoops don't have enough purpose to make
They
them.
do. They
Yeah.
really don't. No.
Let's move, sort of think a little bit into the future as far as you want, but what are you envisioning for yourself and coming back to something you said earlier about like this integration of all these different aspects of your life, all really circling around healing. I'm just curious about what you're looking forward to in the future, what spaces or integration work that you want to be doing.
I think, the first thing that comes to mind in answering that question is for my future self to have more flexibility with my time and with my energy. And, that is really the biggest piece for me in responding to that question because I am really tired and I am starting over. I mean, I feel like I sort of started over when I went to Denver and decided to go back to school, but essentially as a professional, in my career space, I started my new career a few months ago at the age of 46. And there's something to be said. I mean, I about age and about feeling physically a different way at
Yeah.
46 than I did at 26 in terms of the amount
Yeah.
of things that I can accomplish in a 24-hour day. I
Yeah.
definitely had a lot more energy to do that at 26 than I do now. And I'm okay with that. But these are all really big pieces of where I see myself in the near future, which is becoming independently licensed. So going from LMSW to LCSW. And then with my independent license, I can practice privately. And whether that means having my own schedule with an online therapeutic agency, like, the
Mhm.
ones that are out there, building my own schedule with however I want it to be able to accommodate my financial responsibilities. So maybe doing a mixture of that. And then also maybe like doing private practice on my own if I have a few clients who I already know and they know
Yeah.
want to join, and that way they can. So just having flexibility, doing what I love to do, doing therapy and also doing my ancestral medicine, my curanderismo. But really and truly at the top of all of that is just having more time and flexibility.
Yeah. That's a beautiful vision. And I mean, it makes sense, I guess. Like, yeah, as you grow in that practice, I think it naturally will come more, if not time and flexibility, more control, more voice in the space, which I think helps a lot
Mhm.
in that moving in that direction. That's very powerful. The last question I want to ask
Yes.
you is if you have advice to share with someone who might be listening into this podcast today and they're resonating with parts of the stories that you've shared. And I know this is a very broad question, but thinking of someone listening, what advice would you give someone who's resonated with your story?
Hmm. I think that the advice that I would want to give is to listen to any internal messaging that is coming through. And so internal messaging is another way of saying intuition. And to push out whatever is not resonating, whatever makes someone feel a way that does not feel good to them, whatever that looks like, whatever it is, right? Because we're all different and we all operate differently. But whatever is just not really resonating and aligning with them anymore, there is a reason. There's a reason for that. And if this podcast is resonating with them and they feel like they want to make a change and they're at a crossroads, or like they're asking these questions about where am I? Who am I? Then that's especially important. That's an especially important time for someone to be like, okay, what's coming through from my intuition and what is coming through from my external environment that doesn't make me feel good anymore, and reconciling those two.
That is really good advice.
Thank you.
I'm glad I was also here to receive that advice. It's very good.
Me too. Thank you.
It takes courage. You got to believe in yourself. You do.
It takes so much courage, and it takes so much courage and so much strength, because in order to make change, especially for individuals who have a very strong allegiance, I guess if you will, with their friends and their family, like people who've been in their lives like their entire life or years, decades, it's really hard to go against the grain.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this was amazing. I've written down what my bones know, Modern Family, and I just wanted to ask if you want to shout out any organizations or people doing good work that you'd like just to draw our attention to.
Hmm. So, New Mexico Wild is an organization that I'm not too familiar about, but I'm learning about it little by little. And I first learned about it because how I met our mutual friend Leah
Hmm.
is through a friend of Leah's. And so this friend of Leah's works for New Mexico Wild, and she repairs the trails that we use here in New Mexico.
That's so
And
cool.
it is really cool. This mutual friend, that Leah and I have in common, she is just a remarkable person, a remarkable soul. And I love how much she loves our earth. She loves Mother Nature, how she has dedicated her life to this kind of work because it's super important to her, but she's also really good at it. And so, like, I see someone like her and I'm thinking, yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. And we can all do our version of that in this world, right? And so New Mexico Wild, they're at the farmers market here in Santa Fe, sometimes on Saturdays. And they just do really great work for our nature, our trails, what makes New Mexico beautiful.
And why we live here.
And why we live.
The few of us that live here.
Exactly.
Ruby, I've taken so much of your time. Thank you for meeting with me today.
Thank you for
really loved chatting with you so much.
Very much the same. Thank you so much, Annabelle.
If you've enjoyed today's discussion, I invite you to share this episode and subscribe to Able Pathways podcast on your favorite platform. Your support helps us to share these meaningful conversations with more people. Have thoughts about this episode or suggestions for future guests? We would love to hear from you. Leave us a comment or email us at hello@ablepathways.com. Until next time, I'm Annabelle, reminding you that there are infinite pathways to growth. May you travel yours with curiosity and courage.